Malik felt a surge of urgency as they moved quickly, sticking close to the shadows. Every sound felt amplified, the tension in the air thickening with every step. They were close to the edge of danger, and he could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. As they approached, a van parked discreetly in an alley. Malik turned to Alex. "Do you trust this guy?" "I do," Alex replied, determination in their voice. "He's helped me before. He knows how to navigate the chaos." They climbed into the van, the cramped space filled with anticipation. Malik could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them as the engine roared to life. The driver glanced back at them, his eyes sharp with focus. "Hold on tight," he said, pulling out onto the road. The van sped off into the night, the city lights fading in the rearview mirror. Malik glanced at the others, their expressions a mix of hope and fear. They were in the eye of the storm, caught between the danger of the city and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Each passing moment felt like a countdown to the climax of their journey. As they drove deeper into the night, Malik's mind raced with thoughts of the evidence they had collected, the truth, waiting to be unveiled. They were on the brink of something monumental, but the weight of their choices lingered heavy in the air. Suddenly, the van swerved sharply, the driver's eyes wide with panic. "They're on us," he shouted, pressing down on the gas. The engine roared as they sped down the deserted road, the sound of sirens echoing in the distance. "Hold on," Alex shouted, urgency lacing their voice. Malik's heart raced as they rounded a corner, the world blurring past them. He felt the tension in the van escalate, every second stretching out as the threat closed in around them. The driver maneuvered skillfully through the winding streets, desperately trying to evade their pursuers. Malik could hear the sound of tires screeching, the frantic pace of the chase, heightening the suspense in the air. "Where are we going?" Johnson shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Just trust me," the driver replied, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "I know a way out." As they took another sharp turn, Malik felt the weight of moment crashing down around him. They were racing against time, caught in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. Each twist and turn felt like a countdown to their fate, a desperate push toward a resolution that hung just out of reach. The sound of sirens grew louder, the urgency of their situation enveloping them in a shroud of anxiety. Malik could feel the tension in the van, the air thick with uncertainty. They were on the brink of something monumental, and the outcome remained shrouded in doubt. "Almost there," the driver shouted, determination etched on his face. As they approached a secluded exit from the city, Malik felt a surge of hope. They were close, but the danger was far from over. The headlights of the pursuing vehicles illuminated the darkness, a stark reminder of the threat that loomed over them. With one last burst of speed, the driver veered onto a side road, the van bouncing slightly as they hit the uneven terrain. Malik's heart raced as they sped into the unknown, the sense of danger still palpable in the air. As they drove deeper into the darkness, the tension hung heavy around them. They were on the brink of something monumental, and the outcome was still uncertain. Would they succeed in exposing the corruption, or would it all come crashing down around them? The van jolted to a stop, and the driver turned to them, urgency in his eyes. "We have to move quickly. We're not out of the woods yet." Malik felt the adrenaline surging through his veins as they piled out of the van, cool night air hitting their faces. They were on the edge of something significant, caught in the storm of their choices. As they moved further into the darkness, Malik glanced back toward the van, a mix of hope and fear flooding his chest. The stakes had never been higher, and every moment felt like a countdown to the climax of their journey. They were on the precipice of change, the outcome shrouded in uncertainty. In the distance, the sound of approaching sirens echoed ominously, a haunting reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond the shadows. Malik's heart raced as they forged ahead, every step echoing the weight of their choices and the stakes that lay ahead. The path they had chosen was fraught with peril, but they were determined to see it through. They had the evidence, truth waiting to be unveiled, and they would stop at nothing to expose the corruption that threatened to engulf them. With each passing moment, the tension in the air thickened, and the countdown to their fate grew louder. Malik could feel the anticipation building, the weight of their choices pressing down on them. They were in this together, standing on the brink of a revolution, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The trees loomed tall around them, their branches stretching out like skeletal fingers against the moonlit sky. The sound of sirens faded into the distance, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the occasional crack of twigs underfoot. Malik's heart pounded in his chest, a relentless reminder of the danger they faced. They had escaped the immediate threat, but he knew they weren't safe yet. Alex turned to the group, their face set in determination. We need to find a place to lay low and strategize. The evidence we gathered could take down a lot of people, and we can't let it fall into the wrong hands. Malik nodded, feeling a sense of purpose surge within him. They had come too far to back down now. After a brief discussion, they decided to head for an old hunting cabin that Alex knew of, situated a few miles deeper in the woods. It had been abandoned for years, but it was far enough away from the city to provide them with the privacy they needed. As they walked, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching them, the shadows playing tricks on his mind. Finally, they reached the cabin, a dilapidated structure hidden among the trees. The door creaked as they pushed it open, revealing a dusty interior filled with cobwebs and old furniture covered in sheets. "This will do," Alex said, scanning the room. "Let's barricade the door and make ourselves comfortable." Once inside, they quickly set about securing the cabin. Johnson moved a heavy table against the door, while Sophia searched for flashlights and supplies. Malik stood by the window, peering out into the darkness. He could still hear the distant sounds of sirens, but they seemed to be fading further away. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. As they settled in, Malik felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. They had information that could topple powerful figures in the city, but they also had enemies who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate them. "What's the plan?" he asked, breaking the heavy silence. Alex gathered them around, pulling out a laptop that had somehow survived the chaos of their escape. "We need to upload the evidence to a secure server where it can't be touched. I have a contact who can help us get it out to the press." Malik leaned in closer, feeling a spark of hope. "What kind of evidence are we talking about?" "Everything we collected," Alex replied. "Emails, financial documents, recordings of meetings, everything that ties the corruption back to the people at the top. If we can get this out, it'll create enough chaos to protect us." They worked quickly, transferring files from the thumb drive onto the laptop. Malik watched as the progress bar moved slowly, each percentage point feeling like an eternity. The air in the cabin felt electric, charged with anticipation and fear. Suddenly, the screen flickered, and Alex cursed under their breath. "What is it?" Sophia asked, her eyes wide with worry. "It looks like there's a security breach," Alex said, tapping furiously on the keyboard. "They're trying to access the files while we're uploading them. We need to finish this quickly." Johnson leaned over, a worried look on his face. "How do we stop them?" "We can't," Alex said, frustration creeping into their voice. "But we can make it hard for them. I'll initiate a fake upload to draw their attention while we finish here." Malik felt a cold sweat trickle down his back. Time was slipping away, and the threat was closing in. "Let's do it," he urged. "We need to get this out now." Alex nodded and quickly typed in commands, setting up a decoy upload that would feed their pursuers false information. Malik felt the tension in the room rise, the air thick with unspoken fears. "We're almost there," Alex said, their fingers flying across the keyboard. Suddenly, the cabin was filled with the sound of a loud crash. Malik's heart dropped. The door burst open, and a group of men stormed in, guns drawn. "Get on the ground," one of them shouted, his voice booming in the small space. Malik's instincts kicked in, and he dove for cover behind a couch, pulling Sophia down with him. Johnson and Alex were caught off guard, but they quickly scrambled for safety as well. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, and Malik could feel the adrenaline surging through him, heightening his senses. "Stay down," Alex shouted, pulling out a small pistol from under their jacket. "I'll try to create a distraction." "Are you crazy?" Malik hissed, feeling panic rise in his chest. "We can't just engage them." But Alex was already moving, slipping around the corner to get a better angle. Malik's heart raced as he caught a glimpse of the intruders, their faces obscured by masks, but their intentions clear. They were here to retrieve the evidence, and they wouldn't stop until they had it. "On the ground. Now." One of the men yelled again, scanning the room with a predatory glare. Malik could see their eyes darting around, searching for movement. In that moment, Malik knew they had to act. Sophia, Johnson, we need to flank them. We can't let them get to Alex, or the laptop. Sophia nodded, her face pale but determined. What's the plan? Cover me, Malik whispered, feeling a surge of bravery. I'll create a distraction, and you two grab the laptop. Be careful, Johnson urged, his voice barely above a whisper. Malik took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He quietly moved to the side of the cabin, trying to position himself behind the men without being seen. The sounds of chaos echoed in the small space, bullets whizzing by and shouts mingling with the cracking of wood as the men began to destroy the furniture in search of them. Now, Malik shouted suddenly, throwing a chair across the room to the far side, hoping to create a distraction. The men turned in surprise, and he seized the moment. He lunged at the nearest one, tackling him to the ground. The man grunted in shock, and they struggled on the floor. Malik fought with everything he had, adrenaline pumping through him as he wrestled for control. He could feel the man's grip tightening around his throat, but he pushed through, landing a solid punch to the man's jaw. Get the laptop, he shouted, hoping Sophia and Johnson were moving quickly. He could hear the sound of gunfire erupting as Alex took shots at their pursuers. Malik finally managed to throw the man off him, scrambling to his feet just as another attacker rushed at him. They collided, and Malik felt the wind knocked out of him as they crashed against a wall. He fought back, every blow fueled by the urgency of the situation. In the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Sophia and Johnson moving towards the laptop, fingers flying over the keys as they tried to finish the upload. Hurry, Malik shouted, his voice strained. Suddenly, a gun went off, and Malik's heart sank. He turned to see Alex standing tall, smoke curling from the barrel of their weapon. But they were outnumbered, and Malik could see panic flicker in their eyes. Alex, we need to retreat, Malik yelled, throwing a punch that sent his opponent stumbling back. But before Alex could respond, a man charged forward, tackling them to the ground. Malik felt a surge of dread as he saw Alex struggle against the man, their weapons slipping from their grasp. No, Malik shouted, pushing through the chaos to reach them. Just then, Johnson shouted, It's done. We've uploaded the files. Relief washed over Malik, but it was short-lived. The men were regrouping, closing in around them. They had only moments before everything would come crashing down. Let's get out of here, Malik shouted, and without thinking, he lunged forward, grabbing Alex's hand and pulling them up. We need to move. They dashed toward the back of the cabin, adrenaline fueling their escape. Malik could hear the sounds of pursuit behind them, the men yelling, the sound of feet pounding against the ground. They burst through back door and into the darkness, the cool night air hitting them like a wave. Over here, Sophia shouted, motioning toward a narrow path that led deeper into the woods. They followed her lead, adrenaline driving them forward. Each step felt like a race against time, the threat of their pursuers looming close behind. Malik pushed himself harder, the shadows closing in around them as they sprinted through the underbrush. We need to split up, he urged, glancing back to see if they were still being followed. The sounds of pursuit were closer now, and the tension in the air was thick. Are you crazy? Alex replied, breathless. We can't leave each other. We'll have a better chance if we separate. Malik insisted. We can regroup later. Reluctantly, the group agreed, their expressions filled with fear and uncertainty. They quickly planned their routes. Sophia and Johnson would head toward the river, while Malik and Alex would move toward the old railway tracks nearby. They had to create distance between themselves and their pursuers. Be careful, Malik said, his heart heavy as they prepared to split. We'll meet up at the safe house in the morning. Just keep moving. With one last glance at each other, they broke apart, disappearing into the shadows. Malik and Alex ran through the trees, heartbeats pounding in sync with their footsteps. The sounds of the forest enveloped them, rustling leaves and distant animal calls, merging with the echo of their own breaths. Do you think they'll find us? Alex asked, glancing over their shoulder. I don't know, Malik admitted, pushing himself harder. But we have to stay ahead of them. As they continued through the woods, Malik's mind raced. They had made it this far, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles weren't over. The uploaded evidence was their lifeline, but there were still so many unknowns, and the stakes had never been higher. After what felt like hours of running, they finally reached the railway tracks. They paused, catching their breath, and Malik looked around, trying to gauge their surroundings. "We need to find a place to hide until it's safe," he said, scanning the area for any signs of life. Alex nodded, wiping sweat from their brow. "There's an old train car up ahead. We can check there." They moved cautiously toward the rusty, abandoned train car, its doors hanging loosely on their hinges. Inside, it was dark and musty, filled with remnants of a bygone era. Malik stepped inside, feeling the chill of the air settle over him. "This will have to do," he said, looking around for any signs of danger. They settled in, and Malik leaned against the wall, trying to gather his thoughts. "What now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alex pulled out the laptop, still functioning despite the chaos they had been through. "We need to make sure the files are safe, and that the authorities are aware of what's going on. If we can find a way to send a message to my contact, we might still have a chance." Malik nodded, feeling a surge of hope. "Let's do it." They worked in silence, focused on the task at hand. Malik couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger, though. Every creak of the train car seemed amplified in the quiet, and he felt a sense of unease creeping back in. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed outside, sending Malik's heart racing. He exchanged a glance with Alex, and they both froze, their breaths shallow as they listened. The footsteps grew closer, and Malik's mind raced with possibilities. "What if they found us?" he whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "We can't let them know we're here," Alex replied, their eyes wide with alarm. "We have to stay quiet." Malik nodded, holding his breath, as the footsteps came to a halt outside the train car. He could hear muffled voices, low and urgent. "They must be looking for us," he thought, gripping the edge of the laptop tightly. Just then, the door of the train car swung open with a loud creak. Malik and Alex exchanged horrified glances, their hearts pounding in their chests. Malik instinctively crouched down, hiding behind the desk as shadows entered the car. "Check everywhere," a voice commanded. "They can't have gotten far. We know they were here." Malik felt his blood run cold. They had to act quickly. "We need to move," he whispered to Alex, and they slowly backed away, trying to remain silent. But just as they were about to slip out the back, the men spotted them. "There they are," one of them shouted, raising a gun. Malik's instincts kicked in. He grabbed Alex's hand, and they bolted out the back just as the shots rang out behind them. They dashed through the trees, branches whipping against their faces as they ran. "Where do we go?" Alex yelled, desperation in their voice. "Follow me," Malik shouted, leading them through the dense underbrush. They ran until they could hardly breathe, the sounds of pursuit fading slightly behind them. They finally stopped, hearts pounding in their chests. Malik leaned against a tree, trying to catch his breath. "We need to keep moving," he gasped. Alex nodded, their eyes wide with fear. "What's the plan?" Malik took a deep breath, trying to steady his thoughts. "We find a place to hide and regroup. We can't let them catch us." As they began to move again, Malik felt the weight of their situation pressing down on him. They were running out of time, and the evidence they had was their only hope. "We have to trust each other," he said, his voice firm. "No matter what happens." Alex nodded, determination flickering in their eyes. "We'll make it through this." As they pressed on, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that their enemies were closing in. The night felt alive with danger, the shadows swirling around them like a storm. But they pressed forward, united in their goal to survive. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an old logging road. "This might lead us somewhere," Malik suggested, glancing at Alex. "We could follow it and see where it takes us." They made their way down the road, tension hanging thick in the air. Malik kept glancing back, half expecting their pursuers to appear at any moment. Just as they reached a clearing, the sound of an engine roared to life behind them. "They're coming," Alex shouted, panic rising in their voice. "Quick, behind those bushes," Malik urged, pulling Alex toward the thick foliage just off the road. They crouched down, hearts pounding as they listened to the sound of the vehicle approaching. The engine grew louder, and Malik could see the headlights cutting through the darkness. They watched as a black SUV pulled up to the edge of the clearing, its doors swinging open. Men in tactical gear spilled out, scanning the area with flashlights. This is it, Malik thought, fear gripping him. They had to stay hidden, or it would be over. The trees closed in around them, the moonlight filtering through the leaves creating a surreal atmosphere. Malik felt a sense of urgency growing, knowing they were running out of time. Suddenly, they heard voices approaching from behind. They must have gotten away. One of the men shouted, "Spread out. We need to find them." Another voice replied. Malik's heart raced. "We need to move faster," he urged, pushing himself harder. They sprinted through the underbrush, adrenaline surging as they focused on the path ahead. The sounds of pursuit faded behind them, but Malik knew they couldn't let their guard down. Finally, they reached the edge of the woods and spotted the road ahead. A few cars passed by, oblivious to the chaos unfolding in the shadows. Jenna quickly led them toward a narrow alleyway that led to a small parking lot. "There it is." Jenna pointed to her car, a nondescript sedan parked at the far end of the lot. Malik felt a rush of hope. "Let's get there," he urged, and they hurried toward the vehicle. Just as they reached the car, Malik's heart dropped. The SUV had pulled into the parking lot, the men spilling out and scanning the area. "They're here," he shouted, panic coursing through him. "Get in," Jenna urged, frantically unlocking the doors. They jumped inside just as the sound of footsteps grew closer. "Start the car," Malik yelled, his heart racing. Jenna fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking as she tried to start the engine. The men were closing in, and Malik could see them approaching the car, their faces filled with determination. Come on," Malik urged, desperation rising in his chest. Finally, the engine roared to life. Go! Go!" Jenna shouted, slamming the car into gear. They sped out of the parking lot just as bullets whizzed past them, shattering the window. Malik ducked instinctively, heart pounding as Jenna swerved to avoid the gunfire. "We have to get out of here," she shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Head toward the highway," Malik yelled, knowing they needed to put distance between themselves and their pursuers. They tore down the road, the sound of their escape echoing in the night. But Malik's mind was racing with possibilities. They were alive, but the danger was far from over. "Jenna, do you know where we can go?" Malik asked, turning to her. "I have a safe house not too far from here," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We can regroup and figure out our next steps." Malik nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "Let's get there." As they sped toward the safe house, Malik glanced back at the road they had left behind. They had survived the initial onslaught, but he knew the fight was far from over. The evidence they had was crucial, and they had to ensure it reached the right people. "Once we get to the safe house, we need to plan our next move," Malik said, his mind racing. "I'll help you with everything I can," Jenna assured him, her expression serious. "We'll make sure your evidence gets out there." They finally reached the safe house, a small cabin nestled in the woods. Jenna parked the car, and they all jumped out, breathing heavily as they took in their surroundings. "Stay alert," Malik said, leading the way inside. They quickly checked the cabin for any signs of danger before settling in. Once inside, they gathered around a small table, the weight of their situation settling heavily upon them. Malik pulled out the laptop, eager to ensure the evidence was safe. "We need to upload this to a secure server," he said, feeling a sense of urgency. Jenna nodded, her eyes focused. "Let's do it." As they worked together, Malik felt a sense of camaraderie forming. They were in this together, fighting against an unseen enemy. Just as they finished uploading the files, Malik heard a faint noise outside. "What was that?" he whispered, straining to listen. Jenna's expression grew tense. "We might not be alone." They all held their breath, listening intently. The sound grew louder, footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. "Get down," Malik shouted, motioning for them to hide. They crouched behind the table, hearts racing as they listened to the footsteps approach. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the dim light. "Malik? Alex?" the voice called out. Malik's heart skipped a beat. "Who is it?" he whispered. "It's me," Mason. Malik breathed a sigh of relief. Mason was an ally from their past investigations, a tech-savvy friend who had helped them before. Mason, you scared us, Malik said, standing up cautiously. Sorry, I had to make sure it was safe, Mason replied, glancing around the cabin. What's going on? Malik quickly filled him in on the situation, their escape, and the evidence they had uploaded. Mason listened intently, his eyes narrowing with concern. We need to act fast, Mason said. I can help you get this evidence to the right people, but we have to be careful. Malik nodded, grateful for Mason's support. We can't let them know we're here. We have to come up with a plan. As they strategized, Malik felt a sense of hope building. They had allies, and together they could turn the tide. But just as they were about to finalize their plans, Malik's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced down, a knot forming in his stomach as he read the message. It was from an unknown number, but the content sent chills down his spine. We know where you are. You can't run forever. Malik's blood ran cold. They found us, he whispered, panic surging through him. What do we do? Alex asked, fear lacing their voice. Get ready, Malik said, determination hardening within him. We're not going down without a fight. As they prepared for the confrontation, Malik felt a mix of fear and resolve. They had come too far to back down now. Together, they would face whatever was coming, united in their fight for justice. The sound of approaching vehicles broke the tense silence, and Malik's heart raced. They had to act quickly. We need to create a distraction, he said, turning to Mason and Jenna. Can you both handle that? Absolutely, Mason replied, a determined look in his eyes. Let's do this, Jenna added, her voice steady. Malik nodded, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Once we create the distraction, we'll slip out the back. We can regroup at the old warehouse down the road. They quickly put their plan into action, setting up a series of distractions around the cabin. Mason hacked into the nearby power grid, causing the lights to flicker and dim, creating confusion for their pursuers. Jenna gathered supplies to make noise outside, drawing attention away from their exit. Ready? Malik whispered, glancing at Alex. They nodded, determination shining in their eyes. As they prepared to make their escape, Malik felt a sense of unity. They were no longer alone in this fight. Together, they would stand against the forces threatening to take them down. The moment the distractions began, chaos erupted outside. Malik and the others slipped out the back door, hearts racing as they made their way through the woods, sticking to the shadows. They moved quickly, following the path Jenna had scouted earlier. The sounds of confusion and shouting faded behind them, but Malik knew they couldn't let their guard down. Keep moving, he urged, leading the way. As they approached the old warehouse, Malik felt a surge of hope. We'll be safe here for now, he said, pushing the door open and ushering everyone inside. Once inside, they quickly barricaded the door, taking a moment to catch their breath. Malik glanced around the dimly lit space, his mind racing with possibilities. We need to find a way to communicate securely, Mason said, pulling out his laptop. I can set up a VPN connection to get in touch with someone who can help. Do it, Malik replied, feeling a sense of urgency. While Mason worked, Malik turned to Jenna. What's the plan for getting the evidence out there? Jenna's eyes focused intently. We need to ensure it reaches the right people, but we have to be careful. If they're watching us, we need to be smart about our moves. Let's not waste time, Malik said, determination hardening within him. We need to get this out before they catch up with us. Mason finished setting up the connection, looking up at Malik. I'm ready. Just give me the go-ahead. Send the evidence to trusted contacts in the media, Malik instructed, feeling a sense of urgency. They need to know what's happening. Mason nodded, fingers flying over the keyboard as he sent the files securely. Malik watched, heart pounding in his chest. This was their chance to expose the truth and fight back against their enemies. As Mason sent the files, Malik felt a surge of hope. They had taken a crucial step, but the fight wasn't over yet. They needed to stay vigilant and keep moving. Just as Mason finished, a loud crash echoed from outside. Malik's heart sank. They found us, he shouted. Get ready. Jenna yelled, grabbing a nearby tool for defense. Malik and Alex followed suit, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they prepared to face whatever was coming. The door rattled violently, and Malik's pulse quickened. "We have to hold them off," he shouted. As the door burst open, Malik braced himself, ready to defend his friends. But just as he prepared to fight, a familiar voice rang out. "Malik?" "It's me, Emma." Malik froze, recognition washing over him. "Emma," he shouted, hope flooding his chest. "What are you doing here?" "I came to help," she exclaimed, a determined look in her eyes. "I've been tracking your movements since I heard what happened." Malik felt a rush of relief wash over him. "We could use your help," he said, motioning for her to join them. Emma rushed inside, weapon drawn, ready to defend her friends. "What's the situation?" she asked, glancing around. "We sent the evidence to the media, but they're closing in on us," Malik explained quickly. Emma nodded, her expression serious. "We need to fortify this place and come up with a plan to get out of here safely." As they gathered around the table, Malik felt a renewed sense of hope. With Emma on their side, they had a better chance of fighting back. "Let's barricade the windows and doors," Malik instructed, rallying everyone. "We need to hold them off while we figure out our next move." Together, they worked quickly, blocking entrances and preparing for the fight ahead. Malik felt a surge of determination. They would stand together against whatever came their way. As they finished fortifying the space, the sound of footsteps echoed outside. Malik's heart raced. "They're coming," he whispered, glancing at his friends. "Get ready," Emma said, her voice steady. Just as the first men broke through the door, Malik felt adrenaline course through him. "Now!" he shouted, ready to face their enemies head-on. The battle began, chaos erupting as they fought back against their attackers. Malik and his friends worked together, fending off blows and defending their ground. But despite their efforts, they were outnumbered. Malik could see the determination in his friends' eyes, but he knew they needed a plan to escape. "Fall back," he shouted, leading them toward a side exit. "We need to regroup." They slipped out of the warehouse, adrenaline pumping as they navigated the shadows. The sounds of chaos faded behind them, but Malik knew they weren't safe yet. "We have to keep moving," he urged, leading them through the woods. As they pushed deeper into the forest, Malik felt a sense of urgency. They needed to find a way to get the evidence to safety and ensure their enemies couldn't track them. "Do you know a place we can hide?" Alex asked, glancing around anxiously. "There's an old cabin nearby," Jenna replied, her voice steady. "We can regroup there." "Let's go," Malik said, determination fueling him as they hurried through the underbrush. Finally, they reached the cabin, its weathered exterior blending in with the surrounding trees. Malik pushed the door open, leading everyone inside. Once inside, they quickly barricaded the door, catching their breath as they took in their surroundings. "We need to lay low for a bit," Malik said, glancing at Emma. "What do you think?" "I agree," Emma replied, her expression thoughtful. "We need to figure out our next move and ensure the evidence reaches the right people." Malik nodded, feeling a sense of unity among his friends. They were in this together, and he knew they would fight for justice. As they sat down to discuss their next steps, Malik felt a flicker of hope. They had allies, and together, they would find a way to turn the tide against their enemies. But the fight was far from over, and Malik knew they needed to stay vigilant. "I'll set up a secure communication line," Mason said, pulling out his laptop again. "We need to reach out to some trusted contacts who can help us spread the word." "Good idea," Malik replied, grateful for Mason's expertise. "We need to make sure our evidence gets into the right hands." As Mason worked on establishing a secure connection, Malik and the others discussed their next moves. They needed a plan to ensure their safety and the success of their mission. Suddenly, Malik's phone buzzed again. He glanced down, a knot forming in his stomach as he saw another message from the unknown number. "Your time is running out. You can't hide forever." Panic surged through him. "They're still tracking us," he said, showing the message to the group. Emma's eyes narrowed with determination. "We need to act fast. We can't let them intimidate us." Malik nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "We'll fight back. We're not going down without a fight." As they strategized, Malik felt a sense of unity among his friends. They were in this together, and they would face whatever came their way. With Mason's help, they prepared to communicate securely with the media, ensuring their evidence would reach the right people. As they finalized their plan, Malik felt a surge of hope. They had allies, and together they could turn the tide. The fight wasn't over, but with each step they took, they were one step closer to justice. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, Malik felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. They were safe for now, tucked away in the cabin, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely delaying the inevitable. With Mason typing furiously on his laptop, trying to secure a communication line, Malik gathered his friends around. "Okay, everyone, we need to talk about our next steps," he began, looking each of them in the eyes. "We've sent the evidence, but we need to prepare for whatever might come next. They know we have something on them, and they won't stop until they silence us." Jenna nodded, her expression resolute. "We need to stay one step ahead of them. If they're tracking us, we should consider alternative methods of communication. Maybe use disposable phones, or find a way to mask our location." Emma chimed in, "I can help with that. I've dealt with this kind of thing before. If we can get some burner phones, we can set up a separate line of communication that isn't linked to us." Malik felt a swell of appreciation for his friend's resourcefulness. "Great idea, Emma. Let's also consider splitting up for a while. We can meet at a safe spot later, once things cool down." "Splitting up sounds risky," Alex interjected, his brow furrowed with concern. "What if something happens to one of us? We're stronger together." Malik understood Alex's point. They had faced so much together, and the thought of being apart was unsettling. But he also knew that staying in one place was dangerous. "I get it, Alex. But we're running out of time. If we stay here, we're just sitting ducks. We need to make a plan that gives us the best chance to get the evidence out there and keep ourselves safe." After a long discussion, they agreed on a strategy. Mason would remain at the cabin to monitor communications, while the rest of them split up to procure burner phones and gather more supplies. Malik felt a surge of determination. They were taking control of their fate. That night, as they huddled around a small fire, the group shared stories, memories, and laughter, trying to push away the weight of their situation. Malik felt a deep sense of camaraderie among them, realizing how much they meant to each other. Despite the darkness outside, there was warmth in their connection. When morning came, they set their plan into motion. Malik and Jenna headed into town to find supplies, while Emma and Alex went to gather burner phones. Mason stayed behind, his fingers dancing over the keyboard, ready to respond to any messages that came through. The town was quiet, but a sense of foreboding hung in the air. Malik and Jenna moved quickly, picking up essentials and trying to act like any other customers in the small shop. As they walked, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Do you think they know where we are?" Jenna asked quietly, glancing over her shoulder. "I don't know," Malik admitted, feeling the knot in his stomach tighten. "But we have to be careful." After grabbing supplies, they made their way back to the cabin, anxious to regroup with the others. When they arrived, Emma and Alex were already there, each holding a small bag filled with burner phones. "Did you get everything?" Emma asked, her eyes scanning the area. "Yeah, we got some food and essentials," Malik replied, glancing at the bags in Jenna's hands. "What about you two?" "We managed to pick up a few burner phones and some supplies," Alex said, his face serious. "But we need to keep moving. The longer we stay in one place, the greater the risk." Mason nodded, finally looking up from his laptop. "I've managed to establish a secure line, but we need to keep it under wraps. I'll send a message to the media contact we trust and see if they can help us get this evidence out." With renewed energy, they rallied around Mason as he typed. Malik felt hope blooming in his chest. They were on the brink of turning the tide. As Mason sent the message, the group prepared for their next steps. Malik suggested they rotate in pairs, staying in contact through the burner phones. Jenna and Emma would go together, while Malik and Alex would form the second pair. The plan was in place, and they each set out with a specific mission. Malik's heart raced as they ventured into the nearby town again, keeping their heads low and their movements careful. They were determined to send the evidence to the right people and make their voices heard. Days turned into weeks as they executed their plan, each pair moving strategically to gather information and supplies, while staying one step ahead of their pursuers. They communicated through the burner phones, always alert for signs of danger. Malik felt a growing sense of urgency as they approached the final phase of their plan. They had gathered enough evidence to make a significant impact, but the clock was ticking. They needed to ensure it reached the public before their enemies could intervene. One night, as they sat together, Malik glanced around at his friends. "We need to do this. It's time to release the evidence to the media and expose the truth." The group nodded, their expressions serious but resolute. Mason took a deep breath, his fingers poised over the keyboard. "I can set it up to go live. Once it's out there, there's no turning back. Make sure to include all the relevant details," Emma urged, her voice steady. "We need to give them no choice but to listen." With a few clicks, Mason sent the message, and the evidence was officially released. Malik felt a rush of adrenaline as they waited for the media response. Would this be the moment they had fought so hard for? Within hours, their story was making waves online. Headlines blared, and news outlets picked up the story. The public began to take notice, and soon, the backlash against the corrupt organization grew. Malik felt a sense of victory wash over him, but it was short-lived. As they celebrated, the burner phone buzzed with a message. Malik's heart dropped as he read it. "They know what you've done. They're coming for you." Fear flooded his senses. "We have to move," he said urgently, looking at his friends. "They found us." Panic set in as they scrambled to gather their things. They had to leave the cabin before it was too late. "Where do we go?" Alex asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. Malik thought quickly. "We can head to my old friend's place. He lives off the grid and can help us for a while." As they raced through the forest, adrenaline coursed through Malik's veins. They had come too far to turn back now, but he felt the weight of fear pressing down on him. When they reached the safety of Malik's friend's cabin, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. The place was secluded, surrounded by trees and out of sight from prying eyes. "Let's lay low for a bit," Malik said, looking at his friends. "We need to regroup and figure out our next move." For the next few days, they stayed hidden, using Malik's friends' resources to stay connected to the outside world. The media attention continued to grow, and the organization they had exposed was reeling from the backlash. Malik watched as the story unfolded in the news. The evidence they had gathered was sparking outrage, and investigations were launched. It was a small victory, but Malik felt a surge of hope. One afternoon, as they sat around the fire, Emma turned to Malik. "Do you think we'll be safe now? Will they come after us again?" Malik took a deep breath, his heart heavy with uncertainty. "I don't know, but we've done something important. We've brought attention to the truth, and we've stood up for what's right." Days turned into weeks, and while they remained vigilant, the pressure from the media forced the organization to back down. Malik began to feel a sense of relief. They had accomplished their goal, and the public was demanding accountability. Eventually, as things began to settle, Malik and his friends agreed it was time to return home. The fear of being pursued had lessened, and they needed to reclaim their lives. When they returned to their town, Malik felt a sense of closure. The community had rallied behind them, and they were seen as heroes for their bravery. People were talking about the corruption they had exposed, and change was in the air. The group stayed connected, sharing their experiences and supporting each other. Malik often reflected on their journey, the bonds they had forged, and the lessons learned. They had faced unimaginable odds, but together they had made a difference. One evening, as Malik stood on his porch, he looked out at the stars, thinking of the battles they had fought. They had chosen to stand up for the truth, and in doing so, they had changed the course of their lives. "Hey Malik," Emma called out, joining him. "Thinking about the past?" "Yeah," Malik replied, smiling softly. "Just reflecting on everything we've been through. I'm grateful we made it out together." Emma nodded, her eyes shining. "Me too. We've proven that we can face anything as long as we stick together." Malik knew that the fight for justice was never truly over, but he also understood that they had the power to make a difference, to stand up against injustice, and to support one another through whatever challenges lay ahead. As he watched the stars twinkle above, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. They had survived the storm, and now they could finally look toward the future. The lessons they had learned, the friendships they had forged, and the courage they had found within themselves would forever be etched in their hearts. Malik smiled, knowing that together they were unstoppable, and that their story would continue to inspire others to fight for what was right. In the end, it wasn't just about exposing corruption. It was about the strength of their bond, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unwavering belief that together they could make the world a better place. With a heart full of hope, Malik stepped inside, ready to embrace whatever the future held, confident that he and his friends were not just survivors, but champions of change.